Ignite UI has a full AI-assisted development workflow to help you build out rich enterprise-ready applications in React, Web Components, Angular, or Blazor. In this demo, we're going to go through creating a new React application that uses the Agent Skills and Claude Code, the CLIs, the theming CLI, to demonstrate how you can accelerate your app development with Ignite UI and take advantage of agentic code generation. So let's minimize our browser. I have an empty folder I opened up in Visual Studio Code. I've already installed the Ignite UI CLI globally. So all I need to do is actually make sure that it's operational and running. You can see that I have the version 15.01, which is important. You need to be this version or higher for all of the agentic AI workflows to work. So I am going to kick it off with IG. We're going to call this React Demo, and we're going to use React empty project. I want to add a component. Let's add a grid that we'll iterate with. We're going to call this guy grid 1, and we'll complete and run, and we'll let it go on the default port. It's installing the npm packages, and the browser will fire up once it's complete. So there we go. There's our default app. Let's go ahead and do a / grid 1. There's our grid. We'll improve that grid in our app. So you can see what we've done here is using the CLI, we have our application, but it's also installed all of the skills. It's installed the MCP servers. If I was using the default GitHub Copilot chat, we're going to use Claude Code today. And I've got the workflows, Copilot instructions, everything I need to get started using GitHub Copilot chat, but I'm going to use Claude Code. So I need to do a little bit more work. So I'm going to add a new file. Claude Code has a different format for its mcp.json and a different location. So I'm going to put this in the root of the project, which is MCP React CLI. Let's go back to our docs. Let's go to the CLI MCP. Let's go to Claude Code. And I want to use this standard CLI or the default plus Ignite UI theming. We'll copy this. We'll paste it in. What's going to happen as well, you'll see this start button. That will work if you're going to use the GitHub Copilot chat. We're not going to use Copilot chat. We're going to use Claude Code. So if I type in MCP here, you'll see that the Ignite UI CLI is not running. So if I do a new chat, and I do / MCP, it should see it. So you just restart that chat. There's a / clear option as well, and it just makes sure everything's working as you would expect. And now I can even ask it if it is available. Are the Ignite UI, CLI, and skills available to you? And it's telling me, yes, both are available. I have the CLI. We've got the theming MCP server, and all of the skills that we need to make sure that we're using Ignite UI in the best way possible with Claude Code. To update the grid, which is in source app grid 1, I have some pre-baked prompts that I want to use, so we don't have to watch me type all of this out. But the first thing that I want to tell Claude Code, use the MCP servers, the Ignite UI theming, etc. We want to update the existing grid 1 page. I want to add it to the default app routing and navigation. This should be where the application starts, etc. I want to bind it to some new data. So this is a new endpoint that I want to use, which is live data up on the web. Let's go ahead and see what we have here. We've got some invoice information with shippers and customer information and what they ordered, etc. And then I just have some different grid requirements. I want to use auto generate equals true, the dark theme, and then I want to enable a bunch of different grid features. The whole idea with using the Ignite UI grid is that it has literally every feature you would need to build out an enterprise application. You don't have to start from scratch to do really rich, complex interactions that users expect when you're delivering an enterprise data-heavy app. So let's let this go through its ruminations here in Claude Code, and we will actually bring up our browser, and we can resize this a bit and make it a little bit smaller, and we'll kind of see what Claude is doing over here, and we'll see the grid updating here on the right-hand side. And we can see that the agent finished up all of its work, and the grid does have all of its beautiful data. I have the Excel style filtering that I had asked for. All of the features are enabled, so I can do column moving if I would like, move a column to the right or left, obviously sorting, all of the filtering options, column pinning, etc., and full row select with 25 items per page. However, this is just scratching the surface. I want more work done. So let's go ahead and give the agent a little bit more instruction here. And what I want to do is, yes, keep doing the same thing that it was doing before. However, I want to add columns to the grid. So if I go to the grid, I am going to see here we have auto generate true. And then we have our data coming in from our Excel to JSON file. So that data is getting bound to the grid. But I want to customize columns. So I actually need IGR columns with different properties on each column. So we will not use auto generate equals true. So I'm saying add and bind columns in this order. And then for the columns, I want to set some formatting based on the column type. I also want to add a theme chooser. So Ignite UI ships with a bunch of different themes, and I want you to be able to see what those themes look like. And if I scroll down, I'm adding a few more grid features. I want to do some column pinning to the right and to the left. I want to add a custom template. If the quantity is less than 20, I want to show a red down arrow. And I also want to spruce up the columns for the salesperson. I have some images up in the cloud. I want to map the images to the salesperson's name. So let's go ahead and let the agent take over again, and we'll just kind of monitor what's happening here in our page as it's doing its work. And it looks like the grid is wrapping up, or rather the agent is wrapping up, and our grid is looking pretty good. I've got my theme chooser up in the upper left. I have my columns pinned to the right and to the left. I have my image here for the actual salesperson, and you can see that my order IDs are getting selected when they are the same, so that key is working as it should. Now, I didn't go over the toolbar, but we do have the toolbar, which will allow me to pin columns to the right or left. I can do column hiding as well. I can also export to Excel. We have Outlook Group By, so I can collapse this and expand this. You can see this is grouped by my shipper names, which is actually really cool. If I close this or remove this Outlook Group By, my grid is just flat again. And I can even do a grouping by customer if I'd like to. So now I have all of the customer groups. You can see like Bonap has 44 items. If we make this a little bit wider, you get a better view of what's actually happening here. I also have my column template. So remember, I wanted that red down arrow based on the values inside of the quantity field, which is pretty slick. Now, if we go up to our theme switcher, let's swap out to Material Light, which is really nice. Indigo Dark, so the font's changed a little bit. I've got sort of a purple highlight. This is a really good looking font and theme. Indigo Light, very similar. Bootstrap Dark. If you're doing Blazor, or if you have a Bootstrap app, we provide the dark and light themes for Bootstrap, and then Fluent as well. If you're doing like WinUI or a modern Windows app, Fluent is popular for the Microsoft side of the house. But this is really slick. I have now column pinning on the left, column pinning on the right, custom templates. I have an up and down arrow for a conditional format. And then, of course, I can use any of my toolbars. So let's go ahead and actually group by shipper name again. And I am going to export to Excel, and we'll open this guy up. We'll slide it over. And you can see that I have all of the same groups that I show in the grid. So the cool thing about the Infragistics exports is that we export exactly what you see in the grid. So you'll see that same exact grouping capability. So really, really nice. We don't need to save that. And we'll collapse this guy out. Let's go back to our Material Dark. Let's resize this. And I want to add one more feature. What I would like to do is add a custom tooltip now. Well, two things. The first thing I want to do is add a custom theme named Aurora Ops, and this is just passing some of the design theme tokens that my design team gave me and said, create this theme. I want to use these fonts. And then I also want to add a custom tooltip on the customer name. And that's going to have some different features like a sparkline, year-to-date revenue, total shipments, etc. So just further enhancing the app before, or actually I'll go ahead and hit go there, let the agent start to do its thing. But I want to highlight here what happened is we removed auto generate true, and now we have the IGR column for each one of the columns. And that's how we ended up with the correct order. So the columns are being specified, individual properties on those columns are being set, and that's how or why the grid ended up looking like it did. So let's pop our grid open again, and we'll just leave it right where it's at and let the agent do its thing. And then once it's done, we'll just wrap up this example of using the Ignite UI CLI to create an enterprise grid with the built-in AI developer workflow. And it looks like our agent is finishing up. So we have our data in the grid still. Let's go and check out Aurora Ops. Beautiful. So let's scroll over here and we have a new theme, which has my rounded corners, all of the styles that I asked it to add. And now look, as I hover over the customers, you'll see the beautiful tooltip with the sparkline. And if I swap back over to, let's say, indigo dark, we still have our tooltip. Everything looks exactly like it should. So this is really nice. The agent is still giving us a little bit of feedback on what it did here. So it is a nice summary using the Ignite UI skills, the Ignite UI MCP server, and the Ignite UI theming MCP server to build a full-featured enterprise grid in a handful of minutes with Claude Code.